So then let's move back on to Ben White. Obviously, we've heard that he's eligible for England again. Then, Clive, with your England hat on, it's good news, isn't it? But are you concerned that he could receive some abuse from the fans if he goes back?
He's already receiving it. I think people have opinions around players that seem to be perceived to be not turning out for their country. Right? I mean, even the players recently that have been injured, they've been questioned by some of their own players in the squad, which is another podcast in itself, right? So I'm not sure that's healthy. So people have opinions, and that's up to them, you know. But it seems quite clear to me there was a breakdown of relationships within that England squad and within the coaching staff. And it's very, very clear. Many people know this. And there's some people being disingenuous about their responses. And Ben White took himself away from that situation. And now those coaches are no longer there. The rumour is he's now available for selection. Some people won't like that. They say you let your country down and you didn't show up. And I look at it purely as a human side of things. There's some people you can work with and some people that you can't. And he made that decision for his own sanity per se. So as a footballer, he's good enough. Let's not mess about. He's good enough. Yeah. And if he's good enough and playing well for Arsenal, he'll get an opportunity, hopefully. And if they don't choose him, that's the game. You know, it's selection or rejection. It's very, very cold. Very, very cold. And if he's good enough, great, he'll get in. And I hope he does for him. I think it's a piece of his career that may be missing, you know, for the level of football he's been playing for 2 years. So I hope he gets back in my opinion. So.
Do you know, even if he does receive stick, and he probably will do because it's what it is. Jordan Henderson got it when he played for England and he came back from it. Harry Maguire got it badly. He's come back from it. So, yes, he'll probably get it at first, but I think it shows me if Ben White has made himself eligible for an international call-up, that tells me he's never had a problem with playing for England. Like, I'm pretty sure he always wants to play for England, but clearly, as Clive just mentioned there, he had an issue with Gareth Southgate and Steve Holland. Now, sometimes, again, some fans might not see it and they might just think, well, just get on with it, you're playing for England. Sometimes the work environment is such you have to be comfortable in that environment. And if Ben White felt like every time he was going there, he was being targeted, he felt like he'd been kind of mocked in front of the rest of his teammates, and he felt uncomfortable in that environment, then he should have the option as a human being to go, well, I don't want to put myself in that situation, so I'll take myself out. The fact that straight away he's then gone, as soon as they've gone, I want to be selected for England, that tells me that it's never been about playing for his country and representing his country. I'm sure if you sat him down and asked him, he'd say representing his country is the highest honour you can get. Yeah. But the fact that Gareth Southgate and Steve Holland had pretty much lied, basically, effectively. Gareth Southgate came out and said, nothing's happened.
Go Darren. Absolutely right.
Do you know what I mean? Be honest. If Gareth Southgate had been honest and said, right, there's been a situation, Steve Holland or myself have had a situation with Ben White, we've had a bit of a falling out, he's opted not to come back, people would go, fair enough, but he's almost tried to pull it on Ben White and go, don't blame me, blame him. And that's not really fair, in my eyes anyway. Be honest, you're an England manager, you've done a lot of good for England in terms of uniting the fans and the press and the players, making it a place to go and want to play for your country again. But then just be honest about it. Just say, listen, Ben White, we've had a situation, he doesn't want to represent England. Don't put it all on Ben.
Yep.
And that's the thing, obviously, because there was not enough honesty, a lot of Ben White got a lot of stick from fans everywhere because no one was really sure. People were suggesting, but no one was really 100% sure what was going on. And obviously, we were saying a few players have now appeared to suggest that the Kazi reign was a welcome change from Southgate's tenure, and obviously even Jude Bellingham included. Does this maybe then show that Ben White did have a point at the end of the day?
Well, I think there's a few things here. First of all, everyone who's ever led people knows there are times when you have to pick your words very carefully, when everybody's really listening carefully. And Gareth Southgate had that moment with Ben White. He had a chance to say, you know, right now it's not right for Ben to be with England and he's not the right player for the group for whatever the particular reason. I'm not going to take further questions on this. We certainly think he's a great player and we wish him the best. He chose instead to make it Ben White's responsibility. Yeah. He chose to put this on Ben White. And he knew he did that because he knew in doing that, he was taking responsibility off himself. That he didn't have to be viewed as having made a decision or participated in that outcome. And as a manager of England, you know, one of the things that attracts people from my country to this sport in this country is the passion of the fans. He knows the rabid passion of those fans and how it can be pointed positively or negatively at an individual. And he chose to point it negatively at that individual. And I think the most shameful thing about it, from it being a misunderstanding of this individual, is this perception of Ben White not caring about football, not taking football seriously. Yep. And I would simply say, is there a manager who demands more tactically, demands more in terms of preparation and commitment than Mikel Arteta? And if you are someone who plays through injury for Mikel Arteta, who is picked in every game for Mikel Arteta, the idea that you could not take football seriously and still be an important part of a Mikel Arteta team makes no sense logically. So I think it rings hollow. It was a clear effort to deflect responsibility. And as a leader of people, I think that's a little bit shameful. So who cares what I think about the England manager, I understand, but I lost a lot of respect for him in that moment. And I think the narrative of Ben White not caring about football can simply be disproven by how important he's been to football man Mikel Arteta,
I feel like that was just like mic drop, how you just did that. But no, you made a lot of very good points, and there was definitely, as you were saying, you can see it was a complete deflection. That's how I definitely perceive it. And it wasn't fair to put it on somebody, whether he likes football or not, but to put it on someone for then everyone else to come back and think, well, yeah, he clearly doesn't like football. And then to judge him on that when you're right, he's under Mikel Arteta and he's still playing ththrough injuries and things like that. So,
do you know what, though? I don't think it's a case of him not liking football, because I think that's been a bit skewed as well. I just think sometimes, like, we don't maybe all get sick of football, but at some point, he probably just wants to take himself home and maybe not watch as much football as others. That's what I've heard. People that know him have always said that. It's not that he doesn't like football, but when he's at home with his family, that's their time. He doesn't want to be then going, I'm going to watch football, another game and another game. So I think there's a big difference between not liking football and just picking and choosing what you watch. I'm sure if Mikel Arteta said to him, listen, Ben, we're playing Man City at the weekend, just watch these clips of Jeremy Doku, we'll just see what he does well. I'm pretty sure Ben White would go home and do that. But just go home and because he doesn't want to watch, I'm just using an example here, Burnley versus Watford on a Friday night. And
everyone's like me and you, aren't they?
You think it's so weird? Because he doesn't want to watch that. You would never hear a doctor get criticized for not going home and watching ER.
Yeah.
You would never hear a pilot criticized for not going home and watching aviation documentaries. You can be the best in your field and not have to go home and watch the stuff you do at work.
You're back to the bit about the fans being passionate. Football's different.
Yeah.
And fans watch it all day and all night, right? And so he doesn't do that. Well, look where he is. He's playing for Arsenal. He's playing for England. Look at his money. He doesn't love the game. It's almost like, oh, come on, we need to grow up a little bit.
But I actually get that because I grew up in a household where my brother and my dad, we watched every game. It wasn't just Arsenal games. We watched every single game. And when I was growing up, it was everyone. All the time. It was whoever was playing, not just Arsenal, anyone.
I think more players need to come out and talk about how they spend their free time. Because Darren will tell you more than anybody here, it's a very pressurised environment, only becoming more and more pressurised. And when you come home, you need to go away and separate yourself completely, particularly after a game, and decompress. I mean, players struggle to sleep after a game. It's a problem. And then people who are not really sure. I mean, I only got a limited experience in amongst academy kids. There's a lot of pressure even at that level. People are so invested, and they give them time off to decompress. So we mustn't assume we know everything about everybody and how they cope with the pressures of football.
Do you know, also as well, when I played, like, social media wasn't a big thing. There was only Twitter. So now, especially with social media aspect now, I mean, they can go anywhere they want. And all it takes is someone just take a picture and it's instantaneous. And then all of a sudden they can make any situation look bad, like Ben White walking into Nando's and someone will go, well, listen, he's not prepared for the game properly, like, look at this. And it just, that's where I can understand why sometimes they just take themselves completely out of it. And then people go, well, there's a big disconnect between them and the fans.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because Marcus Rashford took himself to America and got pictured there, and he was just sitting there. Now, back when I was a bit younger, players were in Napa in bunches. Trust me. Good job there was no phones around in those days, right? So it's a different world now.
I think there's a growing generational divide too, because there's a lot of people, middle-aged people like myself, who have opinions about how 21 and 22-year-olds should be living their life outside of football. And the fact is, even setting football aside, there's just an evolution in the way young people are spending their time and interacting, and they're playing games, they're on TikTok, they may be doing things that I wasn't. And so what they consider important to them and how they want to spend their free time in their 20s is going to be very different than someone my age who has different priorities. So I think there is an age divide there as well that's a hard gap to bridge.
I'm just checking, I wasn't there, was I?
No. Well,
He'll check the archive folder somewhere.
I've got a picture.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.